Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about the Twilight Zone Season 1 Episode 12. This is the 80s version of the Twilight Zone, I should add. The stories in this episode are called Her Pilgrim Soul and Eye of Newton. So, spoilers for the episode as always. This is a Patreon-sponsored review, so thank you to Cindy for picking this show. The split in this episode is actually very lopsided. So it's only two stories, but it's not like a 50-50 split. The first story is like 35 minutes or so, and then the last story is 10 minutes. Might even be shorter than that, honestly, if I went and checked with a fine-tooth comb. But very, very heavily weighed on the first episode, or the first story, which is directed by Wes Craven. So there's a lot riding on that one. And to be honest, just to spoil my thoughts on the second story is a bit of fluff that accomplishes very little and is even a retread in multiple ways of stuff we've already done on this version of Twilight. Not just Twilight Zone as a whole, including the original show, even just on this 80s version of Twilight Zone, the little short story at the end of this one feels like it's rehashing a bunch of things already. So there's a lot riding on the main story. The main story, which is about two scientists who seem to be developing some kind of hologram laser projection thing, a bit more advanced than what you'd actually expect to find in the mid-80s, but seemingly they have either, I mean, it's clear later in the episode that it's actually someone's soul who's went into this hologram machine. But at the start, you know, it was kind of open immediately if maybe it was like they'd created life of some kind because a little girl appears. And then the girl ages, but it becomes clear as time goes on that it's actually the soul of someone who has already lived and died. And it's like, and I was even questioning at points, like, is this just the soul after they've died? Or is this a weird timey-wimey thing where they're kind of checking in during their lifetime? That's not the case, but there was a couple of little things in the middle that made me think maybe they were going to do something a bit weirder with how it worked. So the point of this story, by and large, is that the main character, the scientist of Kevin, he's having some marital difficulties. Not that it's particularly strained immediately, but very quickly the wife is making it clear that she wants to have kids, and he was supposed to want to have kids, but he seems to be getting second thoughts now. He's hesitating, he's delaying it, he's making excuses, saying he has to work more, has a bit of a fight. And then over the course of the story, he becomes more and more obsessed with being at the lab because he wants to be with the girl/woman in the hologram. At first, it's almost like he has his own child already, and that's what he's focusing on. But then as she grows up, it starts to feel more like he's so obsessed with his time that even if he's not romantically feeling anything, he is cheating on his wife emotionally in the sense that he's completely and utterly focused on spending the time with this woman in the hologram. Now, to be fair to him, the life in the hologram, Nola is her name, she does seem to be aging at a very rapid rate, right? She's aging, I think they said about 10 years every day. So she's only going to be around for a week or so at most, right? That seems to be the case. Now, admittedly, does she have to die? She's a hologram. It's not like the rules of life have to apply, but it does feel like they're going to. Like, you always get the vibe that there is a bit of a countdown element to this. And okay, so I will say that I mostly liked this story, and I liked a lot of the ideas and a lot of the way the themes were really about this man's life and how he's not really committing to moving forward with his marriage, to have kids, and how he's hesitating and not wanting to do that. And how everything that he sort of goes through, because what I was getting early on was the idea that, oh, he's going to sort of almost have this full relationship from start to finish, not with a lover, but like with someone who he started with as a child, right? So he's going to see her grow up and then get old and die, and it's this idea of like, hey, you can do this in real time, and you can, like, yeah, the heartbreak might come one day, but, or, you know, like, I thought they were doing a lot of more sort of subtle, not even that subtle, but a lot more just thematic ties of like him learning something from the experience of being there for this life, who he feels needs him, right? He's the only one really, other than his partner, who's kind of a secondary character. He's the only one who's there for her. He's the only one who's going to be there to like talk to her, to tell her stories, to listen to her concerns, to play with her. They play chess at one point. He programs in some like holographic like things like balls for her to play with and whatnot. And I was getting certain vibes and certain sort of story themes as it was going. And then when it became a bit more clear, like what this was, that this is a woman who had died already and lived a life and had her own marriage and had her own concerns and whatever, and he sympathizes with a lot of her experiences. And when she talks about how her father and family disowned her because she married someone who was Jewish, and she was alive a while ago. She was. Well, she was a kid during the First World War, so she was probably born right at the start of the century, or maybe a few years in. And there's this prejudice that she had to put up with, and even the sexism. She talks a lot about how her father would try and like talk her out of reading books or thinking about politics or any serious subjects, because that's not what a woman's place is, he would say. Like, hearing all this and like having Kevin sort of listen to it and get to understand her and sympathize and go through all this, like, I definitely got the vibe the entire time that by the end of this story, he's going to appreciate what he has. He's going to appreciate that he has a marriage, that he should take chances, that he shouldn't avoid experience in life and go through with things, even if they're a little bit risky, even if he's scared of the heartbreak of losing something. I will say, though, as much as I kind of liked a lot of what it was doing and that stuff, and it's a little saccharine at times, it's got a very sweet tone, I do think it goes a little bit too far at the end of the story with how much is revealed about this person. I liked it when it was just a random person that he kind of linked up with, kind of in the same way that back in I'm forgetting the name of the story, but the episode where the teenager in present day mentally connected with the woman from the witch trial times, right? That was a really good story. And I was hoping this was kind of random like that, where this wasn't someone who was connected to the main character. But not only does it turn out to be connected, it's connected in a very kind of... how do I put this? So I'll just explain it. I'll explain what we find out, right? So we find out all these things. We find out that she died during childbirth, right? She's actually living as a ghost in this hologram longer than she lived in real life. And all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, this all makes sense. It's maybe a bit on the nose, but it all clearly ties into the fears and the hopes and all the things that the main characters are going through, and all the things that he's scared of right now. What I didn't like, though, is that we find out that the main character Kevin is the reincarnated dead husband, right? Nola talks a lot about this man she met, this husband she had, that her family disowned her for marrying, and she had a nice life with him up until it turns out she died quite young in her mid-30s. He apparently is the reincarnated dead husband, and the reason why he's so scared to have kids with his wife is that on some subconscious level, he remembers the pain of losing his wife in the previous life. I really didn't like this part. They do kind of seed it a little bit early on because the subject of reincarnation comes up. The other scientist says, hey, like, do you think she's a reincarnated soul? And the main character's like, I don't think I believe in reincarnation. I'm not even sure if I believe in the human soul. So they do bring the subject up, so it's not out of nowhere when it's revealed. I just don't think it needed to be this neatly all tied up, because they kind of like do this thing where a couple of times Nola, as she's growing up, says, I feel like I'm here for a purpose, like I've got something I need to do. And the idea of a ghost having like a task, like where they have to either finish something up from their life or help someone else before they can move on, is obviously not a new idea. That's a perfectly standard piece of mythology and storytelling as part of the moving on process. And I think I liked it more when I thought it was just a random connection, and she was going to recognize that Kevin was going through this troubled time with his wife. When she asks about his private life, he tries to not talk about it, but she pries it out of him. He finally starts talking about his wife. There's even a really funny, ironic cut here where she says, oh, she's a lucky lady, and it cuts straight to him packing a suitcase back at the house, because he says he has to move into the lab for a little bit of time. But, at least an argument where the wife is not sure if they're split up. The wife is actually unclear if the marriage is now deteriorating or if he is just going to lab for a few days, because he refuses to give her a straight answer. He could just reassure her. He could say, oh, this is going to take maybe a week. It will be no more than that. There's lots of things he could say to reassure her, to make her feel better about it, and he doesn't. He can't bring himself to actually say the things. So it's frustrating, but it's setting up like the happy ending where he finally realizes what he's got and that he shouldn't want to lose it and she shouldn't take it for granted. All the usual things. But I will admit, I did lose a little bit of interest when it was like, no, no, you're actually this woman's lover from a past life, and that's why you're so scared of having kids. So we get the heartfelt like conversation where this comes out, where Nola says it all and says, "This is who you are. This is why you're so scared. Don't lose this again." You know, and a big part of it is the idea that the previous version of him that was married to Nola, after she died, he basically just lived a sad life after that. He never like re-engaged or married. He never like really lived life to its fullest. He just kind of lived like a zombie because he was just sad about his dead wife for the rest of his life. And it sounds quite depressing and it's sad. And she's like, no, you can't have this happen again. You have to actually take advantage of your life this time. Like, the sentiments are completely fine. It's just a little bit on the saccharine side and a little too, like, all perfectly interwoven and connected for me. It's just the sort of thing, it's maybe a taste thing more than anything else, but I think there's more power in her realizing that this stranger that she sees a lot of nice qualities in needs her help and goes out of her ways to do it, rather than it being this. And to be fair, early on, she doesn't know that he's the reincarnated, like, dead husband. She doesn't find that out until quite late on in the story when she remembers that she even died. Because, yeah, it's almost like her life is kind of coming back to her as she ages in the hologram. And the hologram visual's cool, and, you know, him talking to this hologram in like this sort of virtual test tube kind of thing. It is a cool visual. It is very Twilight Zone and its feeling and all that stuff. But it just gets a little bit too all neat for me. And it being a story about reincarnation is not really where I kind of just lost more interest when it became more about that than more just a general story about actually trying for him to learn something from a stranger. And maybe it's fate that he's encountered her. Maybe you could read into that if you want. But I find that more inherently interesting than, oh, surprise, all of you are connected, and I don't know. It's just a little bit too on the sweet side for my taste, and a bit too on the nose, I guess. I mean, the ending plays out kind of like what I expected after that. The fact that the hologram Nola is able to access the phone from the computer that she's connected to, and uses a voice synthesizer to alter her voice into the voice of Kevin when he's not there, to call his wife and ask her to come to the lab and pick him up. So right after Nola disappears, Kevin's wife arrives at the lab, and, you know, they have a reunion, they kiss, and it's like a heartfelt thing, and, you know, presumably he will take the chances and he'll live life to the fullest after that. Yeah, like, it's a nice enough story. I think I liked a lot of the potential of it and the feel of it earlier on more than I liked where exactly it went by the end. I do think there were some more interesting things to mine, this idea that he becomes more attached to his work, but it almost literally becomes about another woman, right? Because, you know, often people talk about this idea that sometimes someone can be so married to their work that it's almost like they're ignoring their marriage or their private life to be attached to it, and this literally makes it about a woman. So I thought there was some maybe more interesting stuff you could have done with that and played with that. At one point, his partner even says to him, "Hey, are you becoming attached to this this hologram?" And I feel like at any point he could have just hit back with, "Well, she's going to be dead within a week, so we might as well like devote our time to her while she's here and give her a nice time, because like she's going to be gone. Like, there's only a week." And again, a lot of logical conversations could get around. And that's not a complaint from me, for the record. I think it makes sense for the character to be struggling to say the right things, because it's showing that he's not in the right place, that he's not thinking clear, he's not putting his wife's feelings first at any point in this episode until the very end, because he's detaching himself, he's keeping himself at a distance. There are some nice little parallels, I guess, to kind of hint of the reincarnated thing, though. Something as simple as like how quickly he met his wife kind of mirrors how Nola met her husband in the past, during a time of education when they were doing night classes and stuff like that. So I appreciate there's some other little parts that do add up to where it was going. I just, more of a taste thing perhaps than anything else, I just wish it was a little less perfect. right? I could have done with a little bit more roughness in how it all tied in, but with a strong lesson that the characters learned by the end. I think I just really like the idea of the bond between Kevin and the hologram Nola just being something that was developed on its own, and decisions that were made were based entirely on this weird new interesting relationship, as opposed to it just secretly being, oh no, they were already a thing in a previous life, she already knows him, and it's all just I don't know. I feel like I'm running out of words here to describe why I don't think this quite hits it for me, even though I don't think there's anything actively wrong with it other than being maybe a little too saccharine at points. But not a bad watch. Certainly a solidly written and directed story. Outside of one rogue boom mic that dipped into the dipped into the shot at one point. Just a little slither, just the tip. Which is probably why they didn't care about it, because back when this was first broadcast, overscan was a thing in all TVs, so it would have been cut out for most people anyway. But if you're watching it now on a proper TV where you see right to the edge of the frame, you do see a little rogue boom mic peek in at one point. During, why I say it's during the chess match. Maybe it's a little bit before then. But it's just something my eye caught. And you know what's so funny is that I feel like it's almost more distracting, because they like the boom operator notices he's a little bit too low, so he lifts it up out of shot to sort of fix it. But the movement of it going out of shot is why I notice it. Like, if it was just there, I might not have picked up on it. But because I saw this quick, like, oh, like they pulled that out, like that's what makes it stick out to me. But anyway, so that was the main story. It's good. It's good. I think ultimately by the end it's not quite to my taste, but I can't really fault the vibes that it's going for, or the interesting premise, or the attempt at having an interesting character drama play out with this as kind of its backbone to keep it all moving. So that's perfectly fine. And I kind of alluded to this earlier. The second story that is very short, I did not like, which is a shame that I didn't like it, because Ron Glass from Firefly, Shepherd Book, is in here, as well as, what's his name, Sherman Hemsley, who most people know from The Jeffersons. I feel like I've not seen The Jeffersons, but I've seen him pop up as a character actor and various other things. Ron Glass plays the devil. That's right, we've got another story where the devil shows up. And yet another joke about the devil and New Jersey being connected. He's wearing a t-shirt. I mean, the t-shirt changes throughout the scene, but at one point the t-shirt he's wearing says, hell is a city just like Newark, which is in New Jersey. So, and there was a New Jersey joke about the devil, or that being hell, back in the poker game story from not that long ago. That was like, what, 4 episodes ago or something? And that was a better story. That was a much more fun story. There was more fun characters. It was more playful, having them all interact with each other and get scared of the devil. Here, it's such a short story, and also the portrayal of the devil is kind of weird. Like, I mean, I love Ron Glass from Firefly, but he shows up in a red t-shirt with different things written on it. It changes throughout the scene, like I said. He's got a couple of horns, and he wears sunglasses, and he talks like he's a hip, like, cool guy. And that's his thing. That's the whole shtick. He talks about how, because the main character, who's like a mathematician of some kind, is trying to solve a formula, and he gets frustrated and says, oh, I'd sell my soul to figure this out. And then here comes Satan. And he's like, oh, it was a figure of speech. But Satan explains that he collects the souls and he sells them off to other parts of the universe, other galaxies, people who want souls for stuff. And he'll get 3 questions to ask Satan, which he must answer honestly, and then after the 3 questions, he must ask another question or give him a task, and if the devil can't complete the task, then he's won, and the devil will leave him alone. But if the devil can complete the task or answer the question, then that's his soul is his, and that's, you know, game's over. So that's all it is. It's the first question is not a real question, because the main character just says really with a question mark, and the devil counts that as his first question. The second question is, oh, I can't remember the second, but the third one was the important one, because it was is there any place you can go in the in existence, you know, the universe, the monoverse, whatever, where you wouldn't be able to come back here from? And the devil's all cocky and says, aha, I'm sorry to say, no, I could go to the Andromeda Galaxy and be back like that. That'd be no problem. So the payoff to the episode, the joke, effectively, that the entire story is built around, is that the task, the command that the main character gives the devil is get lost. And because the devil has just admitted in the previous question that he cannot get lost, the main character wins and the devil disappears. And the narrator even says, hey, here's another bit of advice for if Satan shows up. And I'm like, so they're acknowledging it in the narration that they've already done a Satan story very recently, and they'll probably do more again, apparently. It's just something... I couldn't believe that we did this already. Like, I'm not surprised that we've had another Satan showing up story, because, yeah, I expected it would happen at some point, but that was like 4 episodes ago. This is like really, really quick. So... yeah, really underwhelming, and it felt like, oh, we had a story that was over 35 minutes long, we only have a 10-minute block, we need something super short. We got 2 good actors, but either the writing just isn't there, or it's just not enough time to work with to actually build a compelling, wordplay out of, because effectively, it's a verbal battle between a human and Satan. And the human ends up winning on a technicality, and that's what it is. But the poker game story from a few episodes ago was much better, much more interesting. Interestingly, also with some pretty notable stars in it, because I had Morgan Freeman and Dan Hedaya in it. But yeah, I don't know what else I could possibly say to this. It's not much. It's all set in a single room, which is fine. I love a single set and story. But there really isn't a whole lot to add here, other than the general kind of attitude and characteristics the devil has in this, which is, again, yeah, hit me cool daddy and stuff like that. It's all very, I don't know, yeah, like, I have nothing else to say about it. Ian Newton, go away. It's not very good. So yeah, that's one. Like, what's funny is that this is actually one of the highest rated episodes in IMDb, which for some reason none of this show is rated that highly, and I'm not really sure why. But this is one of it's got the highest rating tag, which means it's in the top, I don't know, 5% of like ratings of episodes. And so I assume some people really connect with that main story, and I think there's a lot of good qualities in there, but it ultimately goes into a little bit too saccharine sweet sort of territory for me. Which I think robs it a little bit from its dramatic impact. Then, maybe it just spells things out. Like, see if they just hinted at the reincarnation, I think I might have liked that more as an open-ended, like, oh, maybe that's what it is, as opposed to, this is what it definitely is, and we're going to explain it to you. That just inherently made it less interesting to me. So, hey, that's my thoughts on this 80s Twilight Zone. And there'll be another one this month, because 2 patrons are kind of teaming up for it. Not 4, though, because 1 episode got swapped out for a new pilot, which I should have up for you sometime early next week. So thank you very much for joining me. You can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and you can get bonuses and whatnot for your trouble. So thank you once again. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?